Hey, this is Nick the Mining Book Guy, and I've got a special presentation today, Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016, in the evening. And this is not only me selling you an idea on a stock called Orca Gold, but also what I'm hoping to be a unique learning experience, kind of letting you peek into my brain and seeing how I make real bets with my money as a speculator, and hopefully it's just as informative for you if you're, a veteran speculator yourself or someone involved with the industry as someone who's this is literally your first time, seeing a video on mining. So I'm hoping this is kind of a 50-50 selling a stock idea and just learning about this process. And with that said, I want to provide a full disclosure. I own plenty of shares in Orca Gold. That is ORG on the TSX-V. I started buying a few months ago. My first purchase was at 36 cents Canadian, all the way up to 51 cents. Haven't bought or sold anything in a few weeks, but I may buy or sell at any time. I just want to be upfront about that. I may even make these videos into a series to follow this over time. But again, do your own due diligence. This is what I'm doing with my money, and this is one of my largest holdings. So what's cool is that everything I want to explain can fit perfectly into one of my favorite websites, which is CEO.CA. You can see right here I'm at the Orca Gold homepage, but I'm going to hop over not just to CEO.CA, but to the Orca Gold room, which is ORG. And I'm in the room right now. These are the most recent posts at the bottom, and I'm going to scroll up. Now, right off the bat, I want to tell you I'm always looking for stocks that are undervalued, underfollowed. Generally, just being underfollowed is a good sign. And even though it looks like there's a lot of posts here, there really aren't. There's a couple big posts by me. That's already a huge plus. And this is a great reason to even just use CEO.ca is to see what other people are interested in. So Orca has been on my radar for a long time, but it wasn't until recently that I got interested. And that's where this is going to be kind of a fun timeline to go through. So starting at the beginning, and look at this, February 4th, 2015, that was literally only a few months after CEO.ca launched. So this, the posts in this room kind of, cover the whole last couple years of CEO.ca existing. I'm going to highlight a few specific posts. So not much at all for months and months. And then September 1st, 2015, this is a very important post for anybody becoming aware of this company. And this was posted in the index, and sometimes posts, and I do this myself, sometimes you post things only to the company room or not necessarily in the index because you don't want everybody to know about it, but it's actually a good placeholder. But this is one that was in the index, so this could definitely be the reason that you even get interested in Orca Gold, and it's that the Lundin family purchased even more shares from what they already had. They when you add this up, the Lundin family owns just under 20%, and if anyone knows about mining, they probably have heard of the Lundins, specifically Lucas Lundin as the big name right now, but his father, Adolf Lundin, he was the big guy, in the previous few generations in mining. Just the fact that these guys back this company and they own so many shares, that's got to get your attention. I'm telling you for sure there's plenty of people out there who still don't realize that they are a core backing in Orca Gold. But I'll get more into some of the specific people involved, which will make that even more exciting. But that's a great first catalyst. Now, with that said, you can see one of my posts here, and this was in January. I'd already been following it for a little while, but this caught my attention, and there's a couple things to note here. So one, this company right now is fully focused in Sudan. Now, this would potentially be the first commercial mine in Sudan, but with that said, what's incredible is that there is possibly the biggest gold rush in the world going on, and it's been going on for years in Sudan, but it's an artisanal gold rush. And so we're talking about the little people, men and women who are not honestly not any different from the California gold rush in 1849, the 49ers, in the US, and doing anything from like digging gold out with your bare hands to having basic tools and then maybe having some mechanized equipment, but really on a small mom and pop scale. That's going on in Sudan. Thousands, tens of thousands of people doing this. And so there's some cool information there, and that's exciting because I'll get into this later, but one of the best ways to find gold is to go where the artisanal miners are, and they are all over Sudan, and so this company absolutely has first mover advantage. With that said, though, Sudan definitely has some negativity around it. Whenever I say Sudan to people in the industry, or actually anywhere, they think of South Sudan immediately, and there's a horrible history there. I mean, most people are aware of the war that had been going on and is still a civil war atmosphere in South Sudan. This is quite far away from that, and there are some issues with the president of Sudan as well with U.S. sanctions. I don't want to get too much into those, but keep in mind there's a huge positive and a huge negative to the Sudan factor. So that's something that immediately, if you were checking out this company, that you would note. And then moving forward a little further, we've got a couple other people I want to point out. So Stateside, he's one of the people I respect greatly at CEO.CA, great speculator himself. I love it that he pointed out some really good information here. Just in terms of, I think one of the better things to point out at a point earlier this year, in March 2016, they were basically the cash level was about the same as the market cap, and I love seeing that. And I don't think I was paying too close attention at the time, but really, I'm going to move just over here. That was right before the big move. So great for Stateside to point that out. And even though a lot of other juniors moved up from that point, it was still a great time to get interested in the company. And so those were some basic fundamental factors to be interested here. But then I also like Mike, another person I respect who makes some great posts here. He pointed out the old Redback crew is working on Orca, and just to show. If you didn't know anything about Redback, this is just awesome to see. In 2010, the Redback team, they sold their company, which had Tasiast, which was an incredible mine in Mauritania, being the real jewel that Kinross wanted. They sold it for just over $7 billion US, which would be about 9 billion Canadian today. I mean, whatever number you're using, it was very close to the top. It was an incredible sale. You have to give a ton of credit to Redback, and to realize that they had success in Mauritania, which was also a country of first mover advantage. So that's a lot of info there, but really, you could pick this stuff up, Redback, Lundin's. Okay, there's an all-star cast here, so that all sounds really great too. And you can see Dirk Diggler, he backed it up right there. So shout out to him. We've got moving forward. Okay, so still not that many people talking about it. I mean, there's a little some info here. Talking about getting a PEA done. I wasn't paying too close attention, but when I saw the PEA, I kind of went on a rant, not related to some other companies too, and I think it's actually useful to read this because I'm kind of summarizing my thoughts, and there's a lot of negativity here, and to give you a little bit, I have to say I'm surprised, disappointed that they're even considering this smallish mine. I was disappointed, and I didn't understand, why are they doing this? Maybe there's something wrong here, and to make a kind of an interesting point that I still find interesting. I actually bought a company called Burry Gold that's located in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I was comparing it to Orca, saying, both of these jurisdictions are high risk, and if I'm going to go into a high risk jurisdiction, I want to invest or speculate in a company that's got that potential to not just be a couple million ounces, but to be at least 5 and maybe 10 million plus. And Burry still clearly has that potential. And Orca, based on the direction, I was like, maybe it doesn't. And, so that turned me off. But with that, without going into too many other details, I said, but Orca, prove me wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things. That's absolutely true. And this one, I'd be particularly interested in hearing from others. So, I was still open to it. But at the same time, Nobody responded. This wasn't in the index. It was in the Orca room, which is one of the rooms that it's a panel that I created, invite only. There's plenty of people in there, and people could have seen this in the Orca room, but nobody responded to this. So there's actually still a positive there that no one seemed to really care about Orca. But I was still following it. I'm still posting other things. Here just showing the Middle East interest in Sudan. I mean, there were still reasons to follow it, but I kind of took a few steps back there. Now that was still in the summer, by the end of the summer, this was really interesting. Reassembles the Redback team. So what's really important to note here is that the Redback team was involved, but not in full flux. It was kind of odd. There was a little bit of musical chairs with some of the company moving around, but this, I think, the company really got serious. And I'm going to actually, I'm going to bring up this. This was the actual news release. That's what's cool about CEO.CA. You can see all the news releases on here as well. Richard Clark becoming the CEO. I mean, he's kind of the head honcho at Redback, but Hugh Stewart was running it up to this point. Hugh Stewart seems like a world-class geologist. I think he could focus more on being on the operations, and maybe Richard Clark's doing more of the wheeling and dealing. Kevin Ross coming in as COO, and then Simon Jackson going from just director to chairman. Basically, all the key guys are getting involved. But what's neat is that this release not only shows that there's some positive momentum coming with Orca saying they'll be on the road to explain the strategy, but actually mentioning, project development and exploration growth in North and West Africa. I guarantee you a lot of people missed this. I actually forgot that West Africa was mentioned here. And that's exciting because I could see this becoming a mid-tier when people were only thinking of Sudan. So already, I remember now when at this point, I was thinking, if they get a good project, oh man, that's going to diversify the risk. And like as a speculator, I didn't want to buy yet, but I was like, that would be huge. And maybe the stock price won't move too much after that news. So this definitely, put it a little, back on my radar again, even though I was kind of moving away. And I commented on that here. Like, it's all here, so other people could see it, but no one else was saying anything. So, that's kind of like interesting, like as a speculator, moving away, but, getting interested again. And that's that. And so it's, again, still on the radar. And then moving down, this wasn't specifically about Orca, but in September, there was the Precious Metals Summit, and I did mention, very interested to hear if there's a new strategy with the core Redback mining team getting back together. So it was on my list of many companies, and I didn't own it. And I remember seeing the presentation. It was really solid. I thought it was cool that Richard Clark really sold Sudan. And I recommend you watch it yourself. Now, it's odd. I don't think the Precious Metals Summit video is available anymore, but the Denver Gold one is. And that was cool that they were at both of those because a lot of companies aren't at both, but they presented at both. And I'm actually going to play for you just about 10 seconds in it to just, for me, the main highlight, even though there was a lot of good things. And I'll have a link on this below my YouTube video, but just listen here for 10 seconds.
To keep us active. So the exploration will increase as we go through the PFS. And we're also hoping to add some other exploration in a second African country as well, which will hopefully be announced in the next few weeks.
Okay, so like that as a speculator, I love picking up little tidbits like that because there was like a 20-minute video, but for me that was the most important thing because I was like, oh man, maybe that new announcement, West Africa or somewhere in Africa, they're going to have a new project. So I was thinking to myself, okay, that's cool. I bet a lot of people missed that, and maybe I'll be the one to, take advantage of it. But I'm still not quite ready to buy yet. But this is cool. Like the things they announced in the news release a month or two earlier, it's coming to fruition, and that was September 14th. So I'm getting pretty excited here. And all this about this new project and maybe just about getting ready to buy, and then the bombshell comes, and this is October 5th. This actually came instead of waiting on that news release. Ross Beatty has acquired ownership. Holy cow! He went from nothing to 12%. So for me, light bulbs were going off. Like this was great. So it's fascinating because 7 people gave this a thumbs up. And there was one comment from Vaughn, and Vaughn's one of my buddies on here. He said, gonna gap up big this morning based on Ross Beatty investment. I'll tell you, that morning, my mind was swirling. I was like, and actually looking back, this is what's so valuable about following these companies over time. I am sure many other people saw this, but maybe they saw, oh, Sudan, Ross Beatty, Sudan, I'm not going to touch this. Like, who cares? Ross Beatty's in a lot of stuff. For me, the Ross Beatty investment is the absolute most important thing based on all the previous knowledge I had, because for me the jurisdiction was a main issue, and it was already seemed to be improving based on what I saw, Richard Clark and Hugh Stewart selling me on it. But to see that it's validated by Ross Beatty, taking this huge investment, I felt like I had to buy immediately. So that morning, I remember putting in a bid for like 10,000 shares at 36 cents. And, I was like, oh man, I hope people don't listen to Vaughn here and start buying like crazy. And I was willing to buy up to 45 cents Canadian. And I was happy. I actually got some shares at 36. And then as the next few days went on, I just loved the story more and more. So I kept buying and buying and buying, and I was buying. Didn't have to buy at 45. A lot of the purchases were in the high 30s or low 40s, and I can even go to this page. You can see that it's we'll zoom in 3 months. It did spike a little bit, but that was not a huge spike. And what's interesting is it occurred around the same time as a lot of other gold plays were getting sold off. So I felt like that was an opportunity, and it started to become a big position for me. Interestingly, it just kept going up, and this is a very positive chart compared to a lot of other gold charts around the same time. But I just want to touch on maybe another thing or two. Let's see. There's not too much left. Yeah, I mean, there's some other things I post in here, and maybe I'll leave some more detailed comments for a future video. But I just want to be clear, like this. It's this whole narrative, and it's exciting because like you can follow a lot of these companies, but there's no reason to necessarily buy right away. And I do have one other thing that's really great. I had a scare because they had a private placement. Again, I was expecting this new exploration property, and it didn't happen. And you know what? They had a private placement at 34 cents when it was already trading in the mid 40s. I actually, on that day, on that morning, I sold some of my shares in panic. I think I sold them at 43 cents. So it was for a small profit, but I was like, oh man, I'm worried it's going to jump down to 34 or whatever, because sometimes that happens. And you know what? It just kept going up. And this is where it's helpful to call the company. Now, I haven't talked to management directly, but I did talk to Alina, who is the investor relations. She's actually listed, in the new agreement, and this helped a lot because I realized even though she had to be vague about the investing group, this was already pre-set up. So I think it was determined when the price was lower. But very importantly, it was explained to me that the people involved with the placement were actually going to be enhancing liquidity, which was in the announcement, but usually sometimes that's not the truth, but it was the truth. The liquidity went way up, and there was a lot of strong buying. So I think it was a very solid private placement, and the share price has come back down. It's back down to, the funny thing is this. I feel comfortable telling you guys about this because it's basically right at my cost average, but I am very comfortable owning my shares, based on all that information. And shout out to Martin and another buddy on here. He basically explained what I just described. I think that's great, but again, people are not following it too closely. The Ross Beatty thing was announced officially by the company, and again, CEO.CA is a great place to see the first announcement. But even the second announcement a few weeks later, a lot of people I think still didn't catch it. And there's been some really solid infill drilling, metallurgical drilling to get ready for the PFS. There's a lot more to this company, but I was trying to describe, all my thoughts around it. So I feel like we're at the early stage of what could be an exciting mid-tier, maybe the most exciting company in Africa based on management, based on, the property and potential properties. The only negative is I wish there was something mentioned on a new exploration project, and it hasn't been, as Hugh Stewart had mentioned in that presentation. But who knows? It might not. That's not. Honestly, Sudan is getting so much more exciting that I'm okay if that takes a while to develop. And the market cap, we're talking like 50 million. Again, I can go into those details in another video, but I wanted to focus in on. This is how I make these bets as a speculator, and hopefully this was useful to you in thinking about if whether you've done this yourself or whether you're new, like you want to piece information, not necessarily exactly like me, but kind of in this way. At least that's how I feel. If you're interested to discuss more or learn more about this, make sure to check out the link that is on your screen right now. MBG Trends is the room you want to visit. And actually, I'm just going to show you really quick. I run this room. I am happy to talk about this stuff, and I don't want to be too focused on selling Orca, but even talking about newbie type things. That's what this room is for, and there's been some good conversations in here, and hopefully there'll be some more in the near future. Yeah, that's all I've got. So thank you for watching. I'll be definitely following Orca Gold closely, and looking forward to more news releases. And maybe I'll get in contact with some of you soon. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Nick, the mining book guy. Talk to you soon. Bye.